It was kind of a North Korean style of a country. It was probably really bad, but to be honest, we had a wonderful childhood. A lot of things that you couldn't do, but there was one thing that you could do. You could just go and play. We used to invent toys because they were not very common. In Europe, we remained as the only Stalinist country, and that includes all the killing methods, all the repression, and all those things, But thank God, 30 years have gone, and I can tell this as a history.
This is the Green on the Go podcast, where we talk about keeping travel sustainable. And for this episode, I got to speak to founder of Albanian Trip, Elton Caushi. So, hello, Elton. Welcome to the Green on the Go podcast.
Hello, India. Thank you so much for the invitation. I feel flattered that you got me here.
It's lovely having you here. So, can you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and, where you're calling from today?
India, I'm born in Tirana, Albania. Actually, this July, it's June 2021, as we're talking, actually. So in less than a month, I will be 45. I was born here. People wonder, how come your name is Elton? So tell us your real name. Well, it's my real name. Actually, I was born in Albania in 1976. And it was a time when we were just about to break with our Chinese communist brothers. Actually, we had a love relation with them for about 10 years with Mao Zedong and the Cultural Revolution and everything. And what happened is that in 1967, so a few years earlier, Albania had decided that this is going to be the first non-religious country in the world. They had banned any religion, and they tried to have local families be persuaded not to name their children after, religious leaders. So they allowed Eltons and Elvises be used among the young generation, actually. And although our parents had no right to listen to Elton John, their children had the right to be named after him. I don't think you would go to jail, but it depended on what kind of family you were coming from. But, it could be a big trouble to be caught listening to Elton John or the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or something like that. We were in the middle of this cultural revolution. And well, I had my childhood in this country, actually, right in the city center in Tirana. Of course, it was communist. It was not communist. It was Stalinist. It was kind of a North Korean style of a country. It was probably really bad, but to be honest, we had a wonderful childhood. Let's say with all the lacking of food or lacking of clothing or fancy or communication or fancy, toys or communication with the world. But still, Tirana was a city with no cars at that time, so it was a big playground for the rest of us. Our parents had no cars. There were a lot of restrictions, a lot of things that you couldn't do. But there was one thing that you could do. You could just go and play, let's say, even 5 miles away from your home, and there was absolutely no problem. And we were always a big bunch of kids. And, we were enjoying life. There were a lot of butterflies at that time, birds and all these things. We used to invent toys because they were not very common at that time to go and buy toys at the shops, but we were good and inventive. And that went like that, then with the fall of the wall of Berlin, Albanian communist regime also fall. That happened, let's say officially in December 1990. And I've seen that with my eyes. It was the time I passed from elementary school to high school, or gymnasium, as we call it here. And let's say that the first 2 or 3 years of gymnasium, we went to school, but we also went to a lot of protesting against the regime, against the nostalgic part of the regime and all those things. The 90s were difficult, to be honest. It was not an easy task to cross from such an isolated country into a new freedom, democracy, Western style, as we all were dreaming and expecting it to be. Well, it's not. There is unfortunately no red button that you go and press, and from a totalitarian country, it becomes a democratic country. You need to learn how to use this tool, which is democracy, and it's not easy. It's like driving lessons. You will need to go through some lessons and do some mistakes, and we did our mistakes in the 90s especially. Albania was also surrounded by former Yugoslav countries, and there were the wars in former Yugoslavia, so we were right next door to it. It ended with the 90s with the war in Kosovo, which is next door to us, and it's massively inhabited by an Albanian speaking population. We were really, let's say, influenced by all these. And then these all ended, thank God. And let's say that from the year 2000 until nowadays, we've seen, our democracy and our lifestyle westernizing and getting better and better and better. And in 2000, I moved to Geneva, actually. I went to study in Geneva. Before that, I had been working in Kosovo for the UN, actually for the UNHCR with a refugee crisis program. And then I moved to Geneva for my real studies. Let's say I spent 6 years of my life there. I studied French language and civilization, and then I had a master's degree in development studies. But let's say that since a child, I had this, probably very weak ability when it came to exact sciences. I was really bad in mathematics, in physics, in chemistry, but I was good in languages. I was interested in literature, in let's say adventures and nature and all these things. So I probably kind of built a little bit of a dream for my future in the travel. And after I came back from Geneva in 2006, I had a couple of experiences working for some hotels in Tirana and then for an American investment fund. And then, I started this small company, which we called Albanian Trip at that time, with my girlfriend at that time, actually, and a friend of ours whose name is George Mihali, which is exactly George Michael. Actually, we started the company, the three of us, and it evolved, like in getting more known and working with amazing visitors from all over the world, mainly Western. It evolved with my girlfriend Vilma becoming my wife and the mom of my children nowadays, and everything went amazingly until, of course, the pandemic arrived.
Yes,
and, well, you know how it works.
And here we are now.
Yes.
So I've actually never been to Albania before, but I've heard some amazing things about it in very recent years, talks of it being sort of the new Croatia for Brits to go abroad to. So what is Albania like?
New Croatia is an interesting way to put it. I think it's a beautiful compliment. Croatia is an amazing country. Actually, it's north from us. Between here and Croatia, there is a tiny country which is called Montenegro, also very beautiful. Lots of mountains and a dramatic history. Actually, Albania, when the Adriatic enters Albania, it becomes a field. Unlike Croatia, where you have the mountains peaking practically in the Adriatic Sea, here it becomes a field and the beach becomes a sandy beach, let's say, and it's a flat part in the western side on the Adriatic. And then we got the Ionian coast, the Adriatic ends in southern Albania, and in front of us we got Bari and Brindisi, the heel of the boot of Italy. And then we got the Ionian Sea, and that's a lot like Croatia. It does look a lot like Croatia, like big mountains. They go down in the Ionian Sea. This is blue, like azure is a good word in French, actually, like sky blue, let's say. And then 1/4 of the country has this plain in front of it. It's full of lagoons. It's it's a beautiful station for migratory birds. It's a great place where we also do a lot of beautiful fruit and vegetables. Watermelon is one big, let's say, export from Albania. It's starting right now, actually. And then you got the rest of the 3/4 of the country, and these are big mountains. It's the same Dinaric Alps that you also find in Croatia, in Slovenia, in Montenegro, and they go down, continue to Greece, actually, and they cover 3/4 of the country. They are apparently young mountains. Apparently they are, we are at the place where Africa is pushing towards Europe, and by lifting the underground, the stratas, actually, they lift the mountains too. 2 years ago, we had a big earthquake in the country. They say that the mountains got up from 2 or 3 centimeters, something like that, like they got higher as well. So it's a country which changes, let's say, all the time, geographically, geologically speaking. It's a moving one. I think this is a bridge somehow, like if there would be a bridge between Italy and the Balkan Peninsula, it would certainly come to Albania, because it's where you have the shortest distance, let's say, between the Apennines and the Balkans. It does have all these influences. It's a country sandwiched between Italy and Greece and the Balkans, actually. So, like we had Caesar going this way, we had Pompeius, we had all the Byzantine emperors, and then the Slavs, and then the Ottomans, the Venetians were here for 150 years. Then we had two world wars. Albania remained under this 500 years of Ottoman Empire, as a far west somehow. We were the far west of the Byzantine Empire, the far west of the Ottoman Empire. And somehow that made the country, really struggle for a position. The people from here tried to survive by, switching to another religion, taking positions in the Byzantine or the Ottoman Empire. They went to fight or to govern for them, all over the Mediterranean, the Middle East, Africa, in some cases, Italy, all over. And then we came to two world wars where Albania was, let's say, in the first one, it was just a battlefield between the neighboring countries, Italians, Austrians, the Slavs, the French, the Greeks, just killing each other in our territory. And then we had a period in the history when we had a king, which is called King Zog, a guy which came from an Oriental family, an Ottoman local family, but which had this very Western education, and which tried to give Albania, a position, a way of saying farewell to its Ottoman past and to say hello to the Western part of Europe once again. He got very attached to Italy, and he built, beautiful roads and beautiful squares all over the cities, let's say. Then we came to World War II. And in that time, some of our educated families brought their children from abroad, and they were coming with these left ideas. So we did have a left movement during that war, but also a nationalist movement and a right-wing movement. And there was a conflict here. The Italians came first, Mussolini invaded, then Hitler also arrived. This is a moment when the British are very present in Albania. Actually, they come and they have these SOEs, special operation executives. They come and try to help the local resistance, kill as many Nazis as possible. And it was a great job. The British and the Americans, they helped this happen. It's just that Enver Hoxha, which is the guy which took the power at the end of that, the first thing that he did, he tried to send a signal to Stalin, a signal of loyalty. And he said, all the British, all the Americans, get out of here. Albania is in the Eastern Bloc, and, we don't want you anymore. And we entered in this, communist style of a country. It was communist. I think it's a compliment. We took everything Stalin did in the USSR, and the local dictator made it like, his own method. And I believe that we were the only country in probably Europe, maybe not the world, because I've seen in Cambodia that they were Stalinist too. But in Europe, we remained as the only Stalinist country, and that includes all the killing methods, all the repression and all those things, But thank God, 30 years have gone until it stopped. And, I can tell this as a history now. But, well, Albania is lush green, let's say. It's beautiful. It's the second youngest nation in Europe right now, 2.8 million. So not very much, for a size of a country which is the size of Belgium exactly, but with a lot more mountains, as I said. I think it's a very interesting country, it has all these combination of all the stratas of history, plus the Stalinistic, let's say, heritage, which we try to use in our tours. And I believe we are somehow, probably I don't think I'm exaggerating, when it comes to food, I believe that after Italy, we have very little competition in the region. Of course, in Croatia, they have beautiful restaurants and beautiful food. And those Michelin star restaurants, is just that if we compare what you get for what you pay, I believe that after Italy, we are the second one in the region.
Wow, you're making me hungry. It's nearly lunchtime, so you're making me hungry.
I thought you had lunch. It's your fault. Actually, yeah. I should have warned you.
And so how was tourism in Albania pre-COVID, pre the pandemic? Where were the tourists coming from, and how was the tourism sector pre-COVID?
Well, in these 15 years that I'm working as a full-time tour operator and also guiding around with visitors, but also with a lot of medias from, let's say, mainly the Western part of the world, I have seen it growing, beautifully. Like, I think what kept tourism away from Albania is the reputation. Albania, a communist country, so they must be Soviet style. And people were worried that, a lot of the generation of your parents, and maybe my parents too, I think you're a lot younger than me, but whatever.
Not that much.
They used to go to Yugoslavia, they used to go to Greece, but there was this black hole where they couldn't go unless they were really fervent communists. I've had in my tours some British visitors that had managed to enter Albania in the 80s and everything, but they were all members of the Communist Party of England, actually, which was probably not very numerous numbers. But some of the companies, for example, from the UK, they started to come back to Albania in the mid or end of the 2000s, actually, and I think that also helped spread the word, and then we had some of the international medias which talked about Albania being a surprising, open, relaxed, beautiful, interesting country. Also, they always mentioned that the fares and the prices are very, very, very logical for Mediterranean standards and European standards. So that's what helped Albania, let's say, somehow enter in the map of travelers rather than tourists. If you see the difference, of course you do.
Yeah. So travelers are more, I guess, there to explore and adventure, whereas you say tourists are there to sit on the beach and get a tan.
Exactly. That is exactly what I meant, actually. And I have noticed that in all these years, at least in our company, but I think in most companies, that is the kind of visitor we're catering for. These are people which have traveled half of the world or maybe more. And, they have known Europe by heart, of course, but, there was this curious nearby country which they were always eager to discover, let's say. So tourism was fantastic, and it was growing, and it was responsible to a certain extent, let's say. But in the last 5 or 6 years, we have seen some of the big holiday companies, which are a bit more into massive travel, let's say, and they have also started to operate in Albania. I think the scale of the operations is still small, and it's mainly visitors coming from countries like Poland, the Czech Republic, Israel, some Scandinavian visitors, let's say, that will come for the beach holidays. But they're always interested, in discovering more about rather than just the beach. I think when it comes to the beach, we have a lot of competition around. There's Greece and there's Croatia and Italy. And although our beach areas are beautiful, but I think the real character of Albania stands in the inside part of it, in the people. I think we don't have a big Colosseum here. We don't have a Tour Eiffel, but we have people. And I think that's the real monument. And that's what travelers were looking after. And,
they want to meet the locals.
They want to meet the locals. They want experiences. They want to learn the stories. They want to see. I always tell people that it's a great country to come. And I always advise them to bring the children to see how difficult life could be, just 1 hour flight from Rome or Vienna. And how lucky you guys have been in Western Europe to have had all the freedom, all the prosperity, and all those things, So Albania is a great place for discovering, experiencing, but also learning about us and yourself.
Yeah,
actually,
absolutely.
And that's exactly what has happened.
Yeah. So obviously, you were saying over the last 5 years, tourism was increasing. You were seeing this boom in tourism in Albania, and then suddenly the pandemic hit. How has this gap in tourism affected the economy in Albania, or was it not as big as an industry yet for it to make a massive dent?
It is actually. In the last 10 years, it has become every year more and more important for the GDP, and it ended up with 2019 being a very successful year and making up for, I think, 18-point-something% of the GDP of the country, which is a great thing on one side, but which is a terrible thing on the other, because look what happened. And, somehow 1/4, or I think more, almost half of the country got paralyzed, with all these people investing their money and future hopes in, hotellery and restaurants and transfers and transport and agencies and everything. And of course, it has affected really badly, actually. And there is little hope that there will be General Motors or Toyota or Philips to come and produce televisions or cars in Albania. The country is small. There is not enough manual labor which is specialized in this kind of activities. So Albania has put all its hopes in the construction of its image as a tourism destination and in the amazing farming products that we're doing. Let's say we do have a bit of mining, but that's, it doesn't feed the nation. It feeds some businesses, which is fine and great, and we love it. But, tourism is a beautiful way of spreading the money into the pockets of, the families. And so we've been very excited about that. But, we saw that this had a handicap. I mean, last year, there are some sectors of the travel which worked still, at the beach. I mean, in Albania, I think we had one of the worst lockdowns during March and April, actually. But Albania did pretty well. I don't know, maybe we are naturally immunized. Maybe the nation is too small. Maybe there was the D vitamin, which comes from all the sun that we have here almost during the whole year, helped us. But, by ratio of the population, I think we had a small amount of tragedies and a small amount of infections, let's say, and we did pretty well. The health system managed to keep the shock, let's say. And then let's say that from May 2020, we have seen our freedom coming back. And, if compared to our neighboring countries like Italy or Greece, or what I see from the UK or Sweden, for example, I believe that we had a tremendously beautiful amount of freedom, let's say. And we didn't stop anyone from coming. Albania was almost 100% open. No PCR was needed and is not needed nowadays. Actually, it's just that, it's not that high in the list of visitors, because I believe that we would have had a lot more people if we were a bit better at marketing. Anyway, on the beach, they worked pretty well. A lot of people from local communities went, and some of the surrounding countries came to the beach. So at the beach, I think they managed to pay for the bills.
Right,
but then you got all the logistics inside the country, in Tirana as well, which is not right at the beach, actually. And we've had a terrible amount of loss, let's say.
And I think interesting that you said, obviously, because the tourism industry was starting to build, a lot of people were starting these new businesses. They were investing a lot of money in the businesses. They hadn't yet seen the return. And so I can imagine that must have hit a lot of people even more so. Now, obviously, this is a sustainable tourism podcast. So I'm fascinated to know a little bit about how this boom in tourism over the last few years, obviously pre-COVID, has affected the environment in Albania, and how that is affecting the local communities and everything like that. Obviously, you said you've got a very good farming industry, but yeah, just if you could sort of shed us a little bit of light on that, because I know that is it for the past 15 years you've been operating as a vanguard company, which dedicates a real emphasis to the need for conservation, sustainability and responsibility. So I know this is an area that you're interested in as well, but I'm really interested to hear about how this boom in tourism has affected the environment in Albania.
It has, of course. There's a lot of the areas which were quite intact, let's say, from local travelers. Locally, we are, until at least a few years ago, for us, traveling or going on a holiday meant almost exclusively going to the beach. And already at the beach, because of the growing demand of the local but also international visitors, there was a big construction. And there are some areas around the coast, the Adriatic coast especially, but also the Ionian coast, where construction has somehow destroyed some environmental values, some architectural values, some of the lifestyle, and when it comes massively, of course, what happens is that, yes, we have a beautiful farming activity, and Albania has a lot of potential to it, but small scale farming, as we like doing in this country, or as we are able to do, brings high prices. So in so many cases, some of the hotels or the restaurants, they would start to serve imported goods, let's say. And this is not fantastic, of course, and not good for the local tradition, local industry, local income, and everything. So that's one thing that has been some sort of a danger, let's say, and it came because of the travel need or the travel industry. In some other cases, in some perspective, all this construction boom has gone, and there is a lot of pressure on nature in so many locations, both in the coast, but also in the inside part of the country, in inland, let's say, on the rivers. Albania is trying, Albania is right now, I believe, I don't have the right statistic, but it shouldn't be very far from being 99.9% produced by hydro. Actually, in Albania, inherited from communism, big hydropowers and river energy. And the recent governments have said that, Albania, we want to become a superpower, a local, a regional superpower in this. So we want to build more of those hydropowers. And they have given so many concessions, like that there is no more room on the rivers. I mean, thank God, some of them have happened. Some of them are just on paper for the moment. But there is a very important amount of local resistance and local conscience, which was not existing, let's say, 25 years ago. And this pressure from the industries to build more on rivers, on mountains, on the coast, has made possible that there is a local birth of a local, let's say, conscience and activism in that regard. Modernizing, yes, we were, and we still are are eager to modernize. We're desperate, we want to be just like Sweden, we want to be like the UK, we want to be like Hong Kong and everything. And if you will come, I'm sure you will come one day, you will notice that on the coast, for example, in some areas, they have built these skyscrapers in the most improbable or inopportune places, let's say. And I don't think that they meant to do any harm. It's just that this misunderstanding about what's really modern, like we expect that a British visitor is going to be impressed if Durrës at the beach or Sarandani in front of Corfu will look like Hong Kong, and this is what they believe it will attract them. And we forget that most of the visitors, which really can be considered as proper responsible travelers, which have the education but also the money, they're looking for places like Sardinia, like Corsica, like Santorini, like these kind of places. Well, I mentioned Santorini, and thank God, because of the lack of infrastructure, we haven't become yet a big destination for cruise ships, but they have arrived, of course. I mean, we have these cruise ships. Thank God they are of a small size, let's say, not compared to nearby Dubrovnik. And they haven't ruined our lives. And we at the tourism sector, we were very excited 10 years ago to see them arriving. And very often they are like small, high-end cruise ships, so very responsible people and everything. But, the risk was there. And eventually after the pandemic, we will see how these are going to function.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the cruise ships, because I've been to Santorini and experienced being in Ia and seeing the cruise ships come in, and the vast amount of tourists get off the boat and just fill this beautiful village with people, and suddenly feel very overwhelmed that it's not the place that I'd seen in the photos. And obviously I can imagine once travel does start returning a little bit more full force in Albania, there's going to be a need to inject more money from tourism. So they're going to want to potentially bring those cruise ships in, because that's where the money's going to come. But it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because you also want to protect this beautiful country that you're in, which is attracting travelers rather than tourists. Because what happens is, as soon as you become very cruise shippy, the travelers aren't interested anymore, and they want something a little bit more raw and real. So what's your opinion on it? Do you think that cruise ships should be allowed in, or would you rather say, actually, no, we'd rather protect our country than bring in the money from these cruise ships?
Idia, I have worked with some cruise ships, to be honest, and like they are really like small scale, like they are. I've seen also we worked with cruise ships in Dubrovnik or in Kotor nearby, actually, and yes, just as you say, I've never been to Santorini, but as you say, they do mostly ruin the life of most people in the area, like including visitors, but mainly locals. I have to admit that, we are desperate to make some money, and I don't think it was embarrassing. It was a shame to say that I want to make money under communism, but now we are free and it's capitalism. And I don't think there is anything wrong with making money. But I really hope that our decision makers, but also our service providers will understand that, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in what can be considered as a boutique travel sector, actually. And I would love our country to see itself specialize in that. And I believe there will be some part of the country which will specialize in that. I see that some people have understood it, and it's exactly the direction that we're taking. But not all of us. A lot of us were, they used to have a construction company, and then they built a hotel, and then a tour operator, and now they are tour operators. And, they care very little for the moment about this. What I would love to see happening is to have our authorities, our decision makers, know a little bit more about what's responsible. I have noticed how, I think they're nice, and I don't think they want to do any harm. They are very proud, and they are very happy of the results. But they are very interested in the numbers of people that visit Albania. There is this big debate about if Albania had in 2019 5 million or 6 million or 10 million people. I think that the ambition of the government is that Albania needs to have 10 million people visiting every year, while the country is 2.8 million. I'm afraid that the approach should be opposite. Like let's see if we can make 10 billion euros every year, and then do it through 1.5 million visitors. I think that's what needs to happen.
We visited Cape Verde with Holiday Extras a couple of years ago, and it's a country that now sees more tourists than its local population. And it's struggled because of that, and that is the danger. So how do sort of local Albanians feel about tourists coming in? Is there a pushback a little bit to protect your country, or are they welcoming them in with open arms to say, come on, let's get your money?
India, because of our isolation during Stalinism, actually, to be honest, and these travel sector, travelers being still a new thing for a lot of our destinations, for let's say generally in the country, we still see visitors as a novelty, and we do have right next to my desk, actually here, I have this ancient version of a constitution, actually. It's called the Canon of Leg Ducagini. This is a constitution probably coming from, as early as Roman law. And, this is a tradition which is still very persistent, I believe, in our DNA. We have a modern law, just like you have, ruling over the country. But that traditional law, it's a lot about hospitality. It's a lot about how to welcome people. And because of that, we love, and we are of course interested in the money, but we're also interested in the fact that we finally are free to receive people from the rest of the world. And we are having the cousins that we pretend to be related to, coming and visiting us, and this is amazing somehow for us. Most of us are not aware of the fact that, yes, we're making good money. A lot of us are making good money for the moment, and we are not aware of the fact that this is going to come with pollution, with changes of the tradition. And I take a simple example, like, okay, I'm a tour operator, I'm making money during the season, this is amazing, the tour guide, the hotel and everything. But what if I'm a teacher at the elementary school and I'm not working in tourism? I still have the poor public salary, actually, which will range around 400 euros more or less a month, and then the prices, they go up, and the prices are catering for Norwegians and Dubai people and French and British. And how can you cope with that? That can ruin your life. And this is something that we need to be careful with.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do know that you've become a signature to the Future of Tourism's 13 guiding principles. So what does this mean by sort of having this status and coming under these principles?
I think it's a beautiful route, because we talk about sustainability and okay, let's do it like this and like that. And yes, we have tried to do a few steps, let's say, with inspiration from our amazing friends, international, let's say, a lot of amazing American and British and Italian and French friends, with which we have worked recently. And I've learned so much of them, and I've learned how, by reducing the use of meat during your meals, you can do a lot of good stuff for the atmosphere, for the country, for the world and everything. But having these principles from the Future of Tourism, these are amazing, because it really puts, you're driving on a dirt road, but now you have a paved road, it's really a paved road, and it clearly brings you towards, let's say, I don't think it's the end of the tunnel, because I think this is never going to end, but it brings you into some easier approaches and easier lighting. I don't think we will be ever able to fulfill all the principles and we will be perfect at all of them. But if we manage to respect, let's say, 12% of them, and then in 5 years, let's say we can go to 17%, I believe it's a great way. And maybe in 2040 or 2045, let's say we can make up for a much better approach into what we're doing.
Yeah, so super interesting. Cool, there can be such a positive from tourism. You know, tourism can have a bad rep, but there can be such a positive that comes from it for improving the livelihood of a country. So yeah, it's really interesting.
In our case, you know, I think the main effects are very positive, are absolutely positive. There is no way you can make 100% positive and avoid all the negative effects. But, you know, I believe in our case, it's about education, first of all, letting people know that you're sitting at the beach and you're leaving your cigarette butts in there. And I mean, this is going to become an ashtray, you know, and when your children will come in 12 or 15 or 20 years with their friends, they will sit on an ashtray. Is that really what you want?
Yeah, exactly. Education is key. So what would your message be then to tourists that are maybe tourists or travelers that are listening to this podcast and thinking, yes, I'd like to go to Albania when I can? What would be your message to them when travel does return?
I think, as a tour operator, I want to say that come, because you will love it. You know, like from London is 2 hours, 20 minutes flight, and it's very closed, and, you know, like, and it's very welcoming, and it's beautifully served and everything. I would also love to tell them that when you come, please try to bring a thermos with you. And, you know, Albania has beautiful springs all over. And try to ask to your local provider to, use less fossil fuel and more of a hike or more of a bicycle. You know, try to help us be more sustainable. You guys from the UK, from the US, from the Western part of the world know a lot more than us about sustainability. We are somehow naturally sustainable in so many perspectives, just because we had no money to buy the technology or had no interest in having millions of visitors on the beach yet, or something like that. But when you come here, please don't drink Heineken, drink Tirana beer. You know, this is amazing. It's really good. Everybody loves it. You know, there's so many things, and always try to warn your guide, tell your guide that, listen, it's 2021, doing, sarcastic comments about, you know, your nationalist neighbors or something like that. It's not worth it. You know, like, maybe we need to find peace and to find, you know, like, brotherhood, and to see that we're all, you know, at the end, we're all very, very equal. You know, if you do those blood analyses, we're, you know, perfect with each other. And so many things. But to be honest, so far in my experience, most often the visitors that we've been working with, they have taught us a lot.
Yeah, so actually what you're saying is that the tourists, especially from UK and the US, we're the ones that need to be guiding how we want tourism to look within Albania. We're the ones that need to say we don't want to be drinking out of plastic bottles, so don't offer it to us. You know, we want to choose a sustainable tour operator. So we are the ones that actually need to be asking these questions, so that it guides the tourism industry in Albania into a more positive route.
Yeah. I don't think one side can do it by its own self. You know, like, this is the globe of all of us, you know, tour operators and tourists and cruise ship owners and everything. So I think we need to struggle, all of us, you know, like, I think I don't love the idea of having all the cruise ships wiped out of this world, you know, they need to die. No, I think we can find more sustainable ways. I don't know, like, if you guys at a cruise ship company made 10 million euros last year, please try to see if there is a way you don't have a very, very fancy car, have a normal car, and try to pay science to do some research, so that, you know, maybe one day you can travel by green energy, by solar energy, you know, like, try to spend a bit more money into, you know, research and discoveries and all those things, you know, like, if you can, I think we can all afford it, you know, like, especially for us in Albania, with the growing of tourism, we've seen our economy growing up and being able to buy things which we never dreamed we could have, and which I think we didn't really need. And how beautiful it would be if we spend a bit more money in, bringing potable water to all the coastal resorts rather than selling bottled water in plastic bottles, things like that. But awareness and education, I believe, is the number one. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but I see the young generation, especially the one coming from the West, and there's also help for our communities. For example, I can see that the Western children, they are so educated. The grandparents learn from their children.
Yeah, the kids are the ones that are telling us what to do.
Exactly. Well, we're trying to be active in that direction, but it's not the case yet. Our children are new consumer children, and they will just consume, and they are not aware of the fact that you're eating your chips, and you're throwing your chip bag in the coast, and it's going to end in the river and in the water and in the fish and all these things. So I believe there is plenty of places where to do just a little bit of effort with a huge amount of good effects.
Absolutely. Oh, well, it's been really fascinating talking to you today. And if anybody was interested to find out a little bit more about Albania, they wanted to get in contact with you, find out, how they can travel to the country, then how is the best way? Where can they find you?
Well, it's the website. Actually, people ask us, where is your office? Yeah, it's in the city center. We have a nice house with some beautiful character and everything, but it's the website. It's albaniantrip.com. Actually, that's we are found. I wish we were a bit better at building up a fancy image and everything. I think the website is a lot of text. I know now it's the time for more photography and more vision and everything. But if you have the patience, go a little bit through the text, and you will understand that we are trying to work as not a factory of tourism, but as a little boutique of artisans of travel, actually. And I think that is noticeable. So give us a chance. To be honest, all modesty apart, we love what we do, and it results in beautiful experiences for the ones that choose us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've definitely got Albania on top of my list.
You better do.
So I'll be in contact. Well, thanks so much, Elton. It's been great chatting with you today.
India, thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk to you. Amazing chat, and have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the end of the pandemic, let's hope. And we'll get there. Let's look forward, all of us, to the new, more sustainable, more responsible freedom.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we will.
We all want our businesses to be sustainable, but what wasn't recognised previously and is so now, that includes actually having a planet to exist on, and having people that really believe in your company.